right-wing political commentator Mindy Robinson going after FBI Director Kash Patel and his deputy Dan Bongino, calling them in a post on X, quote, effing sellouts. That's strong words for fellow travelers. The reason is, she says it there in her next line, Epstein didn't kill himself. That's what they're saying.
She's one of many in the MAGA world blasting the Bureau's brass after they gave this answer about the controversial death over the weekend on Maria Bartiromo's show. Take a listen.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
This is a 180 for Patel and Bongino. In the past, both have given credit to the idea that there's more to Epstein's death than a basic suicide.
And even some supporters of the duo are saying that they are not buying this official line. Alex Jones said in a post on X, overall, I think Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are doing a great job, but on this claim that Epstein's death is not a cover-up, I call BS. So, yes, some people who have closely scrutinized the death of Jeffrey Epstein are not put at ease, even though they generally like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel. Look, I have always said that I understand why people find the circumstances of the death suspicious. Everything about Jeffrey Epstein is very strange, how he was able to get away with this for so long, the extent of the contacts he has in the financial world, in the intelligence community. He was just well connected to so many rich and powerful people, Democrats, Republicans. He could get Bill Clinton on the phone when he wanted. Now that was going back way long ago, before a reasonable person might have known about the horrific, sexual abuse of underage people. But then he went to prison for that kind of, right? The most compassionate release type deal where he could come and go. He had his own, it was like the prison was like his own office, and he could come and go as he pleased. And then when it's over, people like Bill Gates still have an association with him, which is crazy to me. There's so much here that's crazy. So what did he know? Did he still have information on, who the clients of the people who were taking advantage of the underage women sexually? And then he dies in prison. Now, all of that said, suicide in prison is extremely common. And when people say, well, how was it the cameras weren't working? How was it that the guards weren't? Yeah. Are you kidding me? That happens in prison all the time. They're neglectful places. The cameras are often broken. The guards are often, they're understaffed, or they're not doing a good job. This is totally common. So when Kash Patel says, you know what, I've been in this prison, I've been in a lot of prisons, and nothing about the circumstances that I saw actually were suspicious, I think people really should take that with a grain of salt, but I understand why they still have questions.
I think the MAGA base is upset because everyone was waiting for this transparency and released information that actually named names and a full list, and they got none of that. And this was all kind of insinuated about on the campaign trail and the people that surrounded Trump, that this was going to be extremely transparent and you were going to get everything. I hate to admit that the conspiracy theories do cross my mind from time to time, and I'm
no,
what's
give
going
in.
on? But it's just
you're on Rising now. Give in.
The irregular. Well, I hate to agree with anybody that naming that.
That's what the show's all about.
But I think the I'll just skip the word. Just the irregular nature of what happened is a problem to me. But I think we need to more look at what the real problem is the prison industrial complex, which you talked about a little bit, and how terrible these jails actually are. So if Epstein couldn't have protected himself from treacherous conditions like, roaches, rats in the prison, and, poor conditions, sleeping guards, no one actually watching it and keeping him secure, what do you think that poor people in this country are experiencing in those same prisons? I mean, human rights organizations have tried to shut down the Metropolitan Correction Center, which is where Epstein was, because of its egregious conditions. And I think that that's important to note, too, that maybe we should have a look inside of our prison system and maybe take a look at why that's a place where it's so easy for people to commit suicide, or so easy for these things to happen. Because just because we have a light shined on Epstein, I think the bigger issue is what's happening there and how this was able to happen. I don't think that now, after receiving all this information in all these months, that there's some huge cover-up, but it is tempting to lean into that because of how many people he was connected to and how many people might have wanted him gone, to not say anything and ruin their not only careers but their lives.
Yes, the political and financial power he had in the U.S. Virgin Islands is incredible. We did some discussions of that on Rising in years past, and we've talked to guests about it who looked into his relationship with Bank of America. He tried to have the sex offender laws of the Virgin Islands rewritten in order to make it easier for him to come and go.
Wow.
He gave Stacey Plaskett, the delegate from the Virgin Islands. There's some documentation of her seeking perhaps a financial campaign contributions from him, again, even knowing what a monster he was at that point. So there's a lot of interesting Epstein-related stuff, but ultimately how he died. Please, let's continue to look at it, and I'm sure Kash Patel is open to new information if new information arises. What you said about the prison problem, so I agree, but of course then we get into a difficult position because, well, just shutting down bad prisons is not necessarily an answer because, well, we have all these prisoners. If we shut them down, they're going to become either we have to do even more overcrowding, which would make it worse, or we just have to release people onto the streets, and we don't. I mean, most Americans.
Well, there's a lot of
do not
people
want
on small drug crimes that probably could be out on the streets and be fine. They won't harm anyone's family.
I used to think that, and I am a libertarian, crazy libertarian, so I'm in support of total legalization of drugs. So I don't even think drug use should be a criminal issue at all. Having said that, and I used to think we could solve the prison problems by just releasing everybody who's on petty drug charges.
What changed?
There's not that many of them. If you look at the prison population, most people in that situation don't end up in prison. They plead guilty, they get a reduced thing, they don't end up in the prison system. There are some cases, certainly. There are, the occasional woman who was involved got charged with crack cocaine back in whenever it was, the 90s, because they were in a relationship with someone who was doing something, and there are a couple, and got like 50 years. There are a couple of them. It's not a ton. We wouldn't bring down our overcrowding population. It's mostly people involved in violent crimes related to drug selling, drug possession, and that's a tougher political pill to sell, that we need to release people who were convicted of violent issues.
And I heard you say that people should start listening after this Maria Bartiromo interview to our FBI, right? These are leaders that have been there and seen things. But I mean, we have a history of FBI and DOJ doing things that maybe aren't trustworthy. I mean,
I would be the first to say that.
So
yes.
That's what I'm saying. So like we have several instances we could point to, even surrounding January 6th and all that they may have knew beforehand, even surrounding Fred Hampton and his murder. There's so much about the conversation about what actually happened and how much the FBI were involved in these things that we don't know what to believe. And so that's part of the problem that you talked about earlier with Biden and institutions and establishments protecting themselves. There have been instances that people can point to where people were uncomfortable with whatever the given solution was to that the FBI says so. Like people just want real information. If Trump is anti-establishment, right, and kind of breaks all the rules, then he should push to really explain how this happened outside of this is just the prison system, guards fall asleep, and trust me, it's fine. I mean, they seem confident. I saw the tape, trust me. So just explain to the American public what maybe they're looking for, who was on that list, and also how this could have happened with one of your most high-profile inmates.
The FBI is a domestic spying institution that was built by J. Edgar Hoover and presided over him by decades, and that he used to surveil political enemies in both parties, activists. It used to be the case that the Republican Party was the more trusting of institutions of law enforcement and national security, so there was a lot of left Democratic skepticism of the FBI because they collected files on Martin Luther King and
right.
I think on John Kennedy and others. And Republicans were like, rah-rah law enforcement, and Democrats were more skeptical, or at least the left, progressives, maybe not Democrats as a party. Now, Republicans are the party of skepticism in general. They don't trust health experts. I mean, I agree with them. I don't trust health experts either. National security, law enforcement. There's still respect and love for our police officers who put their lives on the line, but as an agency, have these things been captured by hostile political interests or non-democratic forces? So it's interesting times. I've been happy, again, as a libertarian, to see a little bit more skepticism of elite institutions by Republicans, and I've been wary of Democrats losing their innate skepticism of some of these institutions. So let this be the coming together of right and left. Well, let's not all be crazy, paranoid, conspiratorial people, but a healthy dose of skepticism is a good thing.
Asking questions is always a good thing.
Yes.
Next up, Hillary Clinton says Elon Musk and J.D. Vance are hypocrites for advocating for more children.